Yes. Trust me, you will appreciate us being efficient. So this talk, I was sharing this last night. As the registrations for it were like pouring in the standpoint, like you guys are the overflow group for that. For like a split second, I got just a little bit annoyed because I'm like, we'll do this talk on like heart disease, which is the #1 cause of death in America. It's going to kill half of you in this room. Like 7 people will show up. And then I entitled the talk, Blast the Belly Fat. And I can't even fit all y'all in here. So now that I know what your priorities are, all right, I'll make sure that moving forward, I will, I guess, give the people what they want, right? But then I got over it because I'm like, well, everything I'm going to be covering tonight will lessen your chance of heart disease and cancer and help you live longer. So, I'm kind of halfway joking, but it was funny. So from that. So basically the whole, if I can summarize the whole talk in one concept, because I was there 2 weeks ago, you were going to do exactly the opposite of what people in Italy do. All right, so there you go. You guys have a good night. All right? So, no, what we are going to be focusing on tonight is going to be 3 critical hormones when it comes to having your body work for you, all right, and not against you. 3 hormones. All right, these are going to be the 3 hormones. And I'm going to reference this multiple times because if you can understand how we are biologically hardwired, how we are genetically created, how we were really designed to live, okay, then when you realize you can't beat, you will never outsmart or beat how your body is hardwired, all right? And if you just want the proof in that, just look at how we've been failing at that, right? If it was as simple as doing artificial sweeteners and low fat, I posted this on Facebook the other day, where we'd all be skinny, right? And easy. It's just that's not how it works. It's not working, all right? And if it was as simple as just eating less calories, again, it would be that easy. But what you're going to learn is that your body is incredibly efficient at adapting to the circumstances that it is given. All right, for better or for worse, right? Now, the whole goal tonight is to change the circumstances, to work with how we are genetically hardwired and evolutionary hardwired to be in the most thriving situation as possible. So, the first thing we're going to start with, and hopefully everybody got a little note sheet, but if you're doing it on your own paper there, I do want you to write, down this right here. And for those of you that this is your first seminar with me, unfortunately you're going to kind of miss a few little pieces, but I'll try to keep you caught up with this. But I've talked about this concept before as far as what the big why is, what the big why in your life. And I will tell you that in every aspect of your life, and I've learned this from, I didn't make this up, I didn't come up with this on my own, this from very, very, very successful people in all different industries, is that your why, the bigger your why is for why you want to do anything, the easier the what, the where, the when, all that stuff is going to become, all right? If we're honest, if we're sitting here in this room right now, having belly fat that you want to lose, in all likelihood, probably 50, at least 50, maybe not even 80% of what I'm going to talk about tonight, you've heard before. But the difference is that there's been things that have prevented you from putting it in place, obstacles, right? And I'm not even saying that they're not legitimate. They could be valid reasons for that. But when this is big enough, okay, you can totally bulldoze through those, right? Or they're just not as big of an issue as there were before. And you can go through extreme examples, right? I mean, you can show a patient who literally needs to change the way they need to eat or die, like they have no issues making those changes usually, right? A lot of times we're sort of in that gray zone between optimal health and death and disease. It's like we can feel a little bit, it's like easier to kind of like get knocked off course, right? Because the situation is not that dire enough. Now, obviously you don't want your big why to be, because if you don't change, you're gonna die in 6 months or a year, whatever it is. But I mean, ideally this why also is connected to some level of purpose, right? Why you're here. You know, Dr. Joe in our office, you know, when we were had a big quarterly training a couple weeks ago, you know, we all kind of went around what our roles are in the office, and you know, he's like, we started talking about purpose. He said, you know, my purpose is to help people reach their max potential, and I just happen to do that through chiropractic, right? So that's his purpose. And so for this here, I will tell you that there's kind of a level of a spectrum, right? At the weakest level of a big why, it would be to look better in a swimsuit, okay? That would be a very low value big why, all right? That's a very teeny, minuscule why. Again, I'm not saying we don't all want that. Shoot, I mean, I'd want to look better in a swimsuit than I do, right? It's not that we don't want those things, but clearly that's not a big enough reason, or we would all look better in our swimsuits, okay? Now, if we were to go down to the very bottom, or the biggest end of the spectrum, like one of my patients who was here last night, and she, I just remembered it because she was sitting right there. When she first came into my office, and she's 75 years old, so this is about 4 years ago, and I vividly remember sitting here in my consult room, and I'm like, why are you here? Why do you need to make these changes? And she said that, I'm looking to take over the senior ministry in my church. She's like, I can't do that if my body's broken and I'm not a good reflection of how healthy one can be at my age. So her motivation was connected to a purpose, right? And on top of that, it was connected to people other than herself. So my big why that I have, I'll share this with you guys. I mean, it's kind of more of like a vision, and I mean a vision like this is just this like kind of movie that I play in my head, is me being able to be well over 100 years old and being able to run down the beach, okay, with my great grandkids chasing after me and they can't keep up with me, or they're pushing hard to do that. And so that's just kind of like my vision. So I know that if I can do that, I sure as heck can still be adjusting patients, I can be teaching patients, educating, I can still, you know, be taking care of myself and do the things that I want to be doing in my life and fulfilling my purpose, which is to help people, you know, be free of bondage and the slavery of medicine and disease and infirmity and pain and all those things, right? And so that's my vision. So what I want you all to do, and take a couple minutes right now, is write down, and you know, this really should take some time to craft a little bit if you really have never thought about this before. But I at least want everybody to get down a few bullet points as far as what would go in on that. Maybe it's another good example that I heard that you know has always stuck with me is someone that you know they wanted to make sure that they could be around long enough to like make sure that the faith in their family was passed down, right? So just you get the idea. It's like it's okay to. I don't even want to use the word vain because that's not correct. Like we all should look and feel amazing. Like there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But obviously this is not enough. Okay, this is just not enough. Okay, for that. So take some time, write that down, work on that, and then we'll all get up one after another and share in front of the group what it is. I'm just kidding. But I'm telling you. The people 3 months from now that have dropped 15 to 30 pounds based on this talk right now, well, because you actually get this really honed in on. Those of you that'll be unchanged or worse, you won't take the time to go through this. I'm just telling you, like, it's that important. Raise your hand if you need a little bit more time, it's okay. Everybody's good? Got it, cool. All right. So, I know I'm gonna keep going with my notes. My notes are mainly to keep me on track here, but I wanna cover over one more quick thing kind of that I wanna connect to is because when I heard this story, it changed everything that I ever thought about proper goal setting. And I probably shared this before, but it's okay because I do wanna go back over this. So I was listening to a podcast by a natural health expert, and he was just sharing a story of a friend that who was super overweight and super sick, and for a young age had all these diagnoses, all these medications. Really one of those people where legitimately, if he was not making a change soon and turning the corner, it was going to get worse and worse and worse, and eventually threaten his life. And so his friend here is this expert in the natural health world, and he was like, finally he's like, dude, just tell me what to do. And he's like, well, I've told you what to do 100 times. Like, you want me to tell you again? He's like, no, I'm finally ready this time. Like, just tell me what to do again. And so he did that, but he said, we're going to change things up again. We're going to change things up this time. He's like, okay. So his friend is Jewish. He's like, what we're going to do is you're going to take out your checkbook right now, and you're going to write a check to the American neo-Nazi party or whatever the heck it is for, I can't remember, $5,000. And it was enough where it was painful, like very painful. And you're going to post date it for whatever the date is that you need to lose this weight, and you wanted to lose 100 pounds, you needed to lose 100 pounds. I don't remember, it was 6 months here, it doesn't matter, right? So you wrote the date for that check, so set a deadline, right? And with the goal that he could cash, or he could send that check to them from him, literally personally written out by him, if he did not meet his goal by that date. You think he hit his goal? He annihilated it, right? He annihilated it. So, part of that is just realizing that we're human beings and we're gonna fail and we struggle, and we need these things to sometimes anchor to us. And we talk about this idea, not we, but psychologists talk about that, as human beings, we either, every action that we do or decision we make is to either seek towards pleasure or to run away from pain, right? Well, obviously, the amount of pain that would have been to see that check clear in that guy's account was far greater than any amount of pain that it was for him to radically change his lifestyle in the way that he needed to do. So, some of you just need to, if you struggle, it's like, well, get hardcore. And you say, well, that is hardcore. I'm like, well, yeah, I consider this less hardcore than dropping dead of a heart attack far before you should have, right? Or having to go for 6 months of cancer treatment, lose all your hair, right? Rob you of quality of life with all of your, that, I consider that way more hardcore than anything like this right here, okay? So let's talk about what's at stake for having belly fat, being overweight, because again, we have to, the more you can own this, all right? You give leverage over yourself, this stuff, it matters, okay? So go ahead and shout out, or don't shout, but go ahead and tell me what happens, if you are overweight or obese, what does that increase the risk of? High blood pressure, yep. Heart disease.
Diabetes.
Type 2 diabetes. Heart disease and stroke, actually. Okay. Don't make fun of my writing. I'm going to write fast for specific reasons. What else? There's a lot more.
Nothing hurts, your joints hurt.
Osteoarthritis, very good. Joints break down. More weight on them, they're going to wear out faster. Which, ultimately with this, #1 cause of disability in the United States is osteoarthritis.
Depression.
Probably, really we could say it's anything, but I want to just go really specific, linked in the medical literature. Kidney disease, which kind of goes with this one here. Alzheimer's, #1, actually fastest growing cause of death in people over the age of 70. Another big one that we missed is certain types of cancers. But what's interesting beyond that, no matter what type of cancer you get diagnosed with, if you are overweight, your chance of surviving with that cancer diagnosis is less than someone who is not overweight. So you have less good outcomes even just with conventional medical treatment. And then another thing too, I mean, that you really can't put a specific and direct measurement on, but obviously a loss of quality of life, right? Which is not really a diagnosis, but we could definitely agree that it hits that. But so here's what's crazy. Heart disease, #1 cause of death in America. Cancer, #2. Stroke, #3. Diabetes, #4. I mean, legitimately, about roughly 9 out of 10 people that will die this year are gonna die of one of those 4 things, okay, right? And it all goes back to everything that we're literally gonna talk about tonight. So I you know, it's funny, when I first got into this, and my oops, sorry, no, I don't need you, Siri. My mentor would always just, you know, harp on the fact and just, you know, train us and drill us on the fact that, like, listen, like, you are not a chiropractor, okay? Like, you are getting a job where you are going to be saving people's lives. And, you know, for those of you that don't know a whole lot about this stuff, you might think that that's a little bit of like kind of like a weird statement. And because I first thought it was too, just like in the context that I had in my mind. And so I'm like, well, you know, what about like surgeons or paramedics? And like those people, like they save lives. And I'm like, well, yeah, but if 5 out of, and you just use the example, if 5 out of 6 Americans die of heart disease or cancer, which that is the stat, and you can teach someone how to prevent that from happening to them, how is that not saving their life? And I'm like, good point, right? There's different ways to save a life, right? There's critical care, but there's also prevention from a person ending up in critical care in the first place. And I'm like, oh, thank God I picked the right profession, right? From that. So leptin, cortisol, insulin. And remember this, and this is, again, I'm going to keep coming back to this. Everything we're going to filter through tonight is remembering that we were biologically created, okay, to exist in the Garden of Eden, not the Olive Garden, right? So we were hardwired for that. We were hardwired that food, you didn't know always when your next meal was going to be, and more often than not, you had to work to get your next meal. And really up until the last like 200-300 years when agriculture became as prominent in our society as it has been, like that's just not how we ate. Like there wasn't just food all the time hanging around. There wasn't storage. Like there was always work for that. So when you remember that for tens of thousands of years our genes have responded to our environment in a certain way, in only a few hundred years it's been changed where it's pretty hard to die, especially in America. It's probably almost impossible to die of starvation these days, right? Like it's almost, in fact, you can live 30 days without food. Like somebody would probably find you and give you something before that happened. But that is not how our bodies are always going to be thinking and operating on. When's my next meal coming? What is it going to be? And what do I got to do to make sure that I survive to get there, right? So these hormones are all going to be at play working within a hunter-gatherer human species, which is what we are, okay? We don't live that way anymore, but that's the way our bodies are still genetically coded to operate. So real fast, some metrics that are going to be really important that you all can go back and check blood work on, all right, and monitor things are this, because I just don't want to forget this part because I kind of forgot it last night. Insulin, which is one of the main ones we're going to talk about, an ideal range is between 3 and 8, all right? Hemoglobin A1C is between 4.8 and 5.4. Above 6 is when they say you're a diabetic, okay? Right, but anything above 5.4, you are in metabolic trouble. Blood glucose should be between 70 and 85 fasting or lower in certain circumstances. All right, and triglycerides need to be under 100. This is a big one, right? I mean, this is one that you probably all get run every year. You probably get this one run every year too, and this is something, honestly, blood glucose, you could buy a unit and test every single day. If you are above 100 on your triglycerides, okay, you are insulin resistant and also have metabolic syndrome. So that means your body hormonally is not going to be operating well whatsoever. Now, why is this key right here? Because one thing is we break down into the macronutrients, which are carbs, fat, and protein, okay? Ultimately, those are the three nutrients that all food is made up of, okay? Carbohydrates is the only one where we know that human beings do not have a metabolic need for. A person could exist 100% carb-free from the minute they're born until the day that they die. Now, if you don't get fat, you dead, because you won't produce any hormones. You don't get protein, you dead, all right, because we're made up of protein. But carbohydrates, I mean, shoot, there are even still some cultures and tribes and things like that that exist still in 2019 on planet Earth that never have carbs. I mean, like a true, like really northern Arctic Circle, like Inuit tribes, like all they literally eat is fat and protein their whole life, their whole existence, okay? And they don't get heart disease and cancer. So the issue is that all of these things here stimulate insulin, okay? However, by a long shot, and I couldn't even go up on how high in proportion to what the other macronutrients are, stimulate it far more and far greater, okay? And by the way, when I am talking about carbs, because I didn't specifically mention this last night, because again, this is why you guys get the second act here, like just think about it's sugar, all right? It's gonna break down into sugar there. Fats and proteins don't, although they can be converted into sugar through different processes, but carbs directly break down into glucose, okay, blood glucose. Now, when all these things are stimulating insulin, the bad thing that you have to remember in the context of why you're here tonight is that just remember that insulin equals storage. Its primary role is storage. It's a storage hormone, okay? So guess what? Too much insulin, too much storage. And guess what? We're not storing money, all right? We're storing fat. Okay, that's what it's going to be storing. So every single time you eat, no matter what it is, okay, your body will produce insulin, all right? Because that's a response. Because when you eat, it's going to raise blood glucose. So obviously, the more things you eat that raise that blood glucose, right, the more insulin that has to be produced. And I'm going to cover that a little bit more in a second. Now, as we go to blood glucose here, here's the crazy part. And I learned about this in school, but I forgot about this, okay? And this has just boggled my mind at how crazy the body is. Within your entire bloodstream right now, all right, so think about all the miles and miles of capillaries and blood vessels that we have, all the volume, the liters of blood that we have in our body, your body will do everything it possibly can to maintain at any given time only 1 teaspoon of glucose in your bloodstream. 1 teaspoon for all that blood, right? So think about anything that you eat that supersedes 1 teaspoon of sugar, right? Your body will do everything. It'll produce all the insulin it needs to do to get that out of your bloodstream, right, and into wherever it needs to go. Because when sugar stays around in your bloodstream for too long, what happens? It destroys it, right? Look at long-term diabetics. What happens to them? Their feet rot, right? They literally start deteriorating from the inside out. So it takes 7 to 8 years off the life, okay? Because all that excess blood glucose in there a long time, it rots the body away. And so that's why, again, more sugar that goes up, it has to produce more insulin. Because the body's like, well, I don't want to die, right? Survivability. Everything is secondary to survivability within your system right now. So it's going to get that out of there. So, well, I don't need sugar. Okay. 1 sandwich, aka 2 slices of bread, 6 teaspoons of sugar. Right? 1 small bagel, small. I don't think they even make them small anymore, right? Same thing, 6 teaspoons of sugar. And that. So that one sandwich supersedes what your body's regulatory or let's call it more energetic or metabolic needs are for energy from glucose, right? So guess where all that excess sugar is what's gonna happen with it? You don't pee it out unless you're really sick, okay? It's going to get transported into your liver, turned into triglycerides and other fatty molecules, and guess where that goes? Where we don't want it to, right? Midsection or other areas, or worse, if it's a really bad endocrine issue, it's gonna go internally and start surrounding our organs, right, which is the visceral fat. Now, what's really interesting about this, too, when we look at carbohydrates like this, like potatoes, right, that because of the makeup of them, they actually raise blood glucose, right, blood sugar, faster than just table sugar even does, okay? So remember, the faster your blood sugar is going to spike, okay? Remember, this is all going to start coming together, all right? The faster your blood sugar goes up, right, when your body senses that, warning systems start going off. It's like, holy smokes. So it's going to inject a massive amount of insulin, right, to compensate for that. So sugar's going up, insulin is going to skyrocket up to manage that. Because remember, every single second that blood sugar is elevated inside of your body, it's going to be causing damage. It's going to be causing inflammation, right? So the body doesn't like damage, doesn't like inflammation, so it's going to do that. Now, you might know that that's your last bite of cake that you're going to be eating, right? But your system doesn't have the capability to discern that. So just because you all of a sudden say, oh, like I'm on my last piece, the insulin doesn't just start going down like because it's like you told it to, okay? It's just responding to the cues that you gave it. So your sugar spikes up, the insulin's spiking up, and when you have a really bad meal, what happens within like 30 minutes or an hour? You crash, right? Because why? Because your body just injected a massive amount of insulin. Insulin's job is to get sugar out of the bloodstream. And again, you stop putting the sugar in, but that insulin is still going up, and it brings it right back down. So now you feel terrible, again, right? Sluggish, lethargic. And meanwhile, all these other hormones are at play, survivability, right? All these things are happening. So what does it start sending signals? Like, oh, like we don't want to crash down this hard, this bad. So we need something else. Like look for something else to get us back up again. And so then even though you might have just eaten a massive meal, 30 minutes ago, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm hungry, or I need a little snack or something to keep me going or start feeling better. So it didn't just whole destructive cycle, right? And meanwhile, every single time you're doing that, your body's shooting out insulin, a storage hormone. So this whole notion, and hopefully you can start putting the pieces here together, is that obviously you got to do less of these, right? But also, if every single time you eat, even if you're eating healthy, your body is secreting insulin, which is a storage hormone. If you don't want to be storing so much, then what do you need to do less of? Eating, right? And I'm not talking quantity. I'm talking frequency, right? So frequency is what needs to go down, not quantity. I pig out. And again, going back to survivability standpoint, if you didn't know where your next meal was going to come from, and you made a kill or whatever, do you think you're just going to be like, I'll just have a few scraps, You're going to pig out, right? So your body is hardwired to fast and feast. Fast and feast, right? That doesn't mean you have to purposely gorge yourself, every single time for that, but you have to, we're so worried about our portion sizes, and we realize you ate 9 times today, right? If you throw in all of your snacks, right? And all the beverages that you have. Or the fact that you sipped on coffee for 6 hours all morning, right? Every single time you took a sip that maybe had some cream or some stevia in there, your body was shooting out a little bit of insulin, right? So you literally were in a storage mode all morning. And I'm not saying coffee's bad, no, but just think about the pieces that go along with that, right? Where every single time you're doing any beverage, and I'm talking natural sweeteners, artificial sweeteners, some are better than others, right? But they all cause insulin production to happen, even if they don't raise up blood sugar, right? Again, if Splenda was the answer, we'd all be skinny. but it's clearly not working, right? And of course, there's all the destructive neurological issues that go along with that. So remember this, all right, and this is a good writer-downer. It is metabolically impossible, it is physically impossible for your body to burn fat when there's insulin in your bloodstream. Physically impossible to burn fat when there's insulin in your bloodstream. Your body cannot store and cannot burn at the same time. It is physically impossible for your body to burn fat when there's insulin in your bloodstream. So now let's just mention this insane notion that some dummy proposed. Like, I think this became popular, like, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years ago, or at least as a concept, eating 6 to 8 small meals a day. Like, talk about packing it on, right? And again, if that was the answer, I mean, we're all, who wouldn't want to just snack it and do it all day? And if that made you lose weight, like, cool, right? So, not working. You can't outsmart your body that way. It's just, it doesn't need that. So, I want to jump into leptin. Okay, I've talked a lot about insulin in the past, but I want to spend most of tonight kind of focusing on leptin. Leptin was discovered in 1994, so relatively recently, and you think in terms of like as much as we know about the human body, this was 25 years ago only. Leptin, you can kind of think of it as like the master hormone because it directly talks to the hypothalamus in your brain, and the hypothalamus is pretty much what oversees all hormone production in the body. So the key with this is that it is impossible to balance any hormone, whether it be testosterone, estrogen, thyroid hormone, in your body, like safely and naturally, right, unless you actually get leptin, balanced in there. So it oversees all of that. And the interesting part is, so you can test leptin, but I almost guarantee you that if you called your doctor's office tomorrow and be like, hey, I want to get my leptin tested and run, the majority of them are going to look at you like, I don't even know what that is, or I've never heard of that, or why would you want to do that? And part of it is that there's very, very, very little awareness about leptin because there is not one pharmaceutical, okay, on the market, zero, that can influence how leptin operates inside your body. Trust me, if they could do that, they would have the wonder weight loss drug overnight, and they could sell it for whatever they want, and they would sell as much of it as they want, and like they would take over the world, okay? But they have not figured out a way to do that, and I don't think they ever will, because again, you can't outsmart the body to a certain degree. So because of that, and if your doctor's like priority is not really like, you know, like working on this whole sort of like evolutionary medicine, or like just kind of like, you know, understand how the body actually operates, and there's no drug for it, there's just very little awareness about that. I'm not throwing anybody necessarily under the bus, but like if you think, you just even simple, like if your doctor graduated before 1994, like they literally didn't even, it wouldn't have even been mentioned in school. And if they're not doing a continuing education course specifically on that, they're not going to hear about it, because if we're honest, and we see the whole picture, the majority of ongoing physician education comes from who? Yeah, like the reps that are coming in, right? Like they're the ones that are publishing the research and they're bringing it to doctors' attention. So if pharma has nothing on this, right? Like there's nobody kind of handing this, kind of spoon feeding it to our doctors, right? I'm not saying there's none that know about it, but there's not mass widespread awareness of this. But this is the one. I tell you, I'm telling you, like, and I don't think it'll happen, but you just remember this night, if you ever see a drug that comes out that is like the leptin fix, right? Just sit back and laugh at how much money they will be selling that thing for, and people will be falling all over themselves to get it, okay? Because this is the hormone that specifically tells your hypothalamus when and when not to burn fat. Okay? It is the master survival, like keep you alive hormone in terms of that. It is the master of that. And remember, everything is secondary. And we always have to, I know I'm going to keep mentioning, everything is secondary to survivability. Everything. Everything else in your body. That's why you can't, if your body's hardwired to do that, you will never be able to outsmart it to do something that would put you in a state of not being able to survive, or the side effects would be horrendous. And there are drugs that do that, okay? Which is why certain drugs have very horrific side effects. Controls your thyroid, all your energy stores. It tells you when and when you're not hungry, and again, it tells you to either store or burn fat. The number one thing that drives up leptin is going to be chronic carb consumption. CCC, 3 C's, chronic carb consumption. So the only way to fix leptin is to chronically not consume carbs, I guess, right? The way of saying it. And remember, again, you can exist without that. Now, here are the symptoms of leptin resistance. So, meaning a state with which your body is not able to properly receive the signals from leptin to burn fat. Obviously, some of these are going to be really obvious, but I'm going to say them all afterwards. Overweight, you get tired after meals, love handles, high blood pressure, constantly craving comfort foods, anxious or stressed out. This is a big one. You're hungry all the time, or odd hours of the night. Like you're woken up because you're hungry. Osteoporosis is another big factor there. Unable to lose weight or keep it off. Regularly craving sugar stimulants. Fasting triglycerides over 100. Tendency to need a snack after meals, right? You have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep, and again, that's a big one. When your leptin is off, here's where this is crazy. And again, I'm going back to survivability. When your body cannot hear leptin, it thinks that it is physiologically starving. Because the cues from leptin are to tell you that you don't need to eat anymore. Because leptin, and I know I'm kind of jumping around, I apologize for that. Leptin is produced by your fat cells and your fat cells only. Isn't that interesting? So you got more fat cells, you got more leptin. Meaning, like, if you're plumped up for the winter, let's say, then it's telling your brain, like, oh, I don't need to eat as much right now. Your fat cells are shrinking down because maybe you're getting to a place where you haven't eaten in a while, you got less fat, less leptin, so then your body knows it's starving. When your body thinks it's starving, what do you think its number one priority to do metabolically is? Well, preserve, right? Take whatever it possibly can to do to keep energy going. So it's not, so if your body thinks it's starving, even if you have, doesn't matter, 500 pounds of excess weight on you, if it thinks it's starving at the neurological level, how is that fat going to come off? It's not. It's like, well, I think I'm starving. Like, I can't turn on any of the fat burning pathways to make that happen. Again, this is why you can't trick your body, because it's already tricked. You've already tricked it by doing this right here. Okay, and there's other things too, but this is by far the main one, okay, as far as what is so easy to control. So as the leptin from the fat's coming in, it's going into your hypothalamus in your brain, all right? And eventually what happens is that the pathways get blocked and leptin cannot be heard anymore. So your body will then produce more and more leptin. So like again, you can test leptin when you see elevated leptin levels, just like you would see elevated insulin levels in someone who has got metabolic syndrome or diabetic, the body's response is, okay, well, in the beginning, it'll produce more. Like, think if somebody's not listening to you, you shout louder, right? Or you do more aggressive forms of communication. But eventually, if you're doing that to somebody, they're going to tune you out, okay? That ship sails. That's what happens here with this pathway from that. So another thing, your body can't burn fat if insulin is present, but your body also can't burn fat if it thinks it's starving, okay? Now, I want to really hit this home because this was a study, and I know this from my level, but I never seen a study actually that had done this. So this was the most extreme weight loss study that was ever performed, just most aggressive. So it was 3 groups of people, thousands in each category. They were all fed a 1,000-calorie diet, all right, in a day, okay? First group, 90% of those calories came from carbs. Second group, 90% protein. Third group, 90% fat. So in other words, 900 calories of it were carbohydrates, 900 calories of it were protein, 900 calories of it were fat. 1,000 calories a day, okay? Now, the traditional medical advice is that if you want to lose weight, the number one thing you'll always hear, right, in just conventional medicine is to reduce your calories, right? So if normal is 2,000, they tell you if you eat 1,500, you should lose like, what, a pound a week, I think is what they say. The group that was doing 90% carbs gained, on average, 0.24 pounds a day. The protein group lost 0.6, fat group lost 0.9 pounds per day. So this whole notion of like all calories are created equal, I mean, this 100% disproved this. This is when someone maybe jokingly says that, you know, 100 calories of a Little Debbie, you know, is the same as, you know, kale, right? Like, slap them. It's just not true, okay? So, and like, I mean, I never seen this study before. Like, I almost literally fell out of my chair when I read that, and just seen how, I mean, I knew this inherently, but I'd never seen it done that aggressively with that, you know, with that too. Now, here's what's interesting. I want to go over a couple more things that have been done study-wise. When we look at metabolism, or how the scientific community calls it, they call it your BMR, basal metabolic rate, okay? Metabolism. Who do you think has higher metabolism? Someone that's overweight or underweight? What would you think? Yeah, I think if you're a person super skinny, right, and like they look underweight, like they're like too skinny, that they'd have a higher metabolism. But time and time again, they've actually found that people that are overweight have much higher metabolisms than people that are underweight. Interesting, huh? So go back to what I've written down probably 7 times, I'm not going to write it again, survivability. In the wild, because remember, we're all animals, ultimately, specialized with souls and all that, but we're all animals. In the wild, when there's more food available, right, you don't get fat, obese rats, right? Like if there's tons of things for them to eat, you don't get bigger rats. What do you get? More rats, right? If there's tons and tons of game for the lions to eat, you don't get fat lions that can't chase after lions, you get more lions, right? When the population goes shrink, you don't necessarily get emaciated animals, there's less of them. Our bodies are hardwired to respond to what's going on. So if we have too much that we're carrying, your body's going to do everything it can to help burn that, right? And if you're underweight, and again, going back to like if your body thinks it's moving closer and closer to starvation, it's actually going to slow that metabolism down to try to keep you alive. they found this is why the calorie gain does not work. So the more you physically decrease the calories in your diet, your body is like, all right, well, that's the game we're playing. Then it's going to physically reduce your metabolism as we go along. Now, you do that over the course of time, right? And this is how this happens. Again, I'm giving you guys context for all these things you've experienced before, not to like make fun of you, because we've all been there in one way or another, but you have to realize, why did my body do that? Why did it not work before? Well, if this is your calories, and then, oh, well, now it's like on my vacation, I'm going to have 7 cheat meals, so all of a sudden your calories spike up like crazy. Your body, unfortunately, is not able to be like, oh, well, that's the game we're playing now, and all of a sudden it's like pivot and just like crank on the furnace, and then that's why you can lose 5 pounds over 5 months and then gain 5 pounds in a weekend. Because you're like, oh, again, you're starving me, okay, like I'm going to go along with that. Ooh, all of a sudden we get all this food, perfect, I can stack it on because all I've known for the last 5 months is being starved. So I'm going to help you survive. I'm going to help you go along with that. So your body's not betraying you when that happens. You're actually betraying your body with that, how it goes. And again, if you can understand that, then you can be like, okay, well, so what's the logical solution? We got to get these hormones working the way we're supposed to do that. So leptin, insulin, super important to go over. And I'm going to go over one more thing with insulin and leptin in a second, but I just want to finish because I'm going to show a diagram on the other page here, but I want to, on the other side. But I want to go over also cortisol, okay? And I could do a 7-hour seminar on all these, but I'm just doing the highlights. So cortisol is sort of classically known as the stress hormone, all right? It's made by your adrenals. Every time your body is under stress, cortisol is produced to help you compensate for that. Now remember, the difference between a caveman and a computer man, right, that we live in 2019 now, our bodies are hardwired the same way. The biggest stress levels that a caveman would be is like, I'm running out of food, I might get eaten, right, whatever it is. They were large, big events. It wasn't like all day, every day, right? Unfortunately, computer people of today, I should politically correct, cave people, right? Right? We are bombarded with stress all day long on various levels. Late for work. My kid, pooped everywhere, right? My boss yelled at me, I missed a deadline at work, oh, my taxes are due, oh, I forgot to file this, I forgot to pay that, right? All day long. Your body does not know the difference, ultimately, between a robber pointing a gun at you and your boss yelling at you. It's going to respond in very similar fashions because it's still, no matter what, it's perceiving it as a threat. One's bigger than the other, but it's still, all it means is you just get more cortisol production if someone came in with a gun and held us all up here versus like you maybe forgot to do one thing at work today. It's still going to respond via stress. So what happens when cortisol goes up? Your blood pressure goes up because if you're under stress, if there's a threat coming, your body's like, all right, well, it's go time, right? So blood pressure goes up. Well, oh my gosh, like no wonder why stress is correlated with blood pressure, right? The more stress, like my blood pressure, oh my God, that shot my blood pressure through the roof. Well, it's not because you have imbalanced blood pressure. It's like, well, no, because of the stress levels in your life, your body's doing exactly what it should to help you, so it thinks, to compensate for that. And then when there's and then also this works hand in hand with insulin, right? Storage hormones, like, well, stress might be famine, might be not eating for a little while, so let me get some more insulin going so we can store more, right? So this is why, but then if you live in this elevated cortisol state all the time, again, it plays back to this here, and you're gonna get storage mode all the time. So chronic cortisol levels cause hyper adrenal issues, right? Or adrenal like spikes. But after so long of these things being, like whipped by your body and by our lifestyles, eventually they become hypo, or they begin to get adrenal fatigue. Some of you maybe have heard of that term before, or even adrenal exhaustion, because eventually certain glands in our bodies just can't keep up anymore. Look at a diabetic who needs insulin, who needs medicine. It's because their pancreas played the game as hard and as long as it could. It's right. It's like the athlete that was nonstop every play, like these running backs in the NFL. Like their shelf life, if you will, is so short because they get hit all day. It's like in a car accident 30 times a day, right? Or 30 times in a week. They're the weekend warrior that just gets wore out from that. That's what happens to these organs. That's what your pancreas fails. And now we got to start injecting artificial insulin to make up for the lack of production and all these things happening. And boom, it's a big mess. So the number one way to fix your cortisol is just addressing stress levels on so many levels, okay? Or as many as you possibly can. This has been something that I have been working so hard at. And not that I live in a life of stress that keeps me up awake at night or stress like that, but it's just all day long, little things that I could respond, being a business owner, taking care of lots of people, I could be responding to. And again, my body doesn't know the difference between, I need to get this note sent off to a lawyer for a personal injury case, the stress of getting that done in a timely fashion, or again, there's a tiger chasing after me, right? It's bombarding all that. So the best ways to beat stress, I'm going to start going through some action steps now, is deep breathing, in and out through your nose, gratitude journal, journal. Eliminate what you can. I'll talk more about some ideas. Then you can find calming herbs and supplements. And then the other really big one is reducing technology, right? Specifically at nighttime, and then along with that, actually I should probably put this on, this is truly number one, sleep. Sleep is your body's natural biological response to repairing, restoring, balancing, reducing stress. All those things right there. And I'll put this one down here as the super secret one that I'll go over in a minute. So sleep, right? Sleep. So important. If you're not rested, things. In fact, they found that just a couple nights of poor sleep can put you in a state of insulin resistance, which means you can't, if your insulin is not working properly, it's hanging around, you're in constantly storage mode. Nasal breathing specifically, so in through your nose, you want to do 6 to 8 second counts, so in 6, out 6 through your nose. It triggers something called the parasympathetic nervous system, which is kind of your resting, relaxing part of your nervous system. We live in fight or flight, which is the sympathetic, all right, all the time, right, that high strength, like that, adrenaline mode, right? So this is the direct counter to that. Doing a gratitude journal, there's actually been many studies that have taken people with anxiety, clinical depression, and what they do is they have them in various forms. Every night and every morning, they have a little notebook that they have by their bedside, and they'll write down physically what they're grateful for throughout the day. And they've actually found people get off anxiety and depression medications just by remembering how many good things are actually going on inside of their life. So this is huge. So my wife and I, we started doing this. I did it physically for a long time, and now we just do it in bed and just kind of list off 3 things every single day that we were grateful for, and then we also share with each other one thing we're looking forward to tomorrow. And I'm telling you, it's an amazing, beautiful thing. Doing that right before bed versus going to bed with anything else running through your mind. Who do you think is going to get a better sleep, right? And I'd be guilty of it, right? Of putting my cell phone on screen lock mode, laying on the side, and just scrolling through Facebook and ESPN, and any of the times that I've done that has never enhanced my life one bit. You know what I'm saying? But all that stuff, and the kind of right here, all that intensity of light and stimulus even if you're watching like videos of like, I don't know, like goats like little baby goats jumping around, it's like, I promise you that will not enhance your life better than like laying for a few moments in gratitude before you go to sleep, okay? Not to mention all this tech at nighttime extends all this abnormal light and stimulus into our brain, tricking it to think that it's daylight out, right? So ideally, most research now is showing 60 minutes before you wind down is when you want to knock out as much of that as possibly that you can. Now, I am not there yet, so I'm kind of working backwards by like 15-minute increments. So start with 15 minutes. Like you can go 15 minutes and without the phone before you go to bed. You know what I'm saying? With the TV on or whatever it is. Then once you get 15 down, then move it back to 30. Eliminating, I know I'm kind of jumping around, eliminating sources of stress. I mean, this could be as simple as deleting some numbers in your phone, right? And people that every time, I mean seriously, I did that when I graduated from chiropractic school. I eliminated, not that I had like an insane amount of friends, but like, I mean, I probably have one number in my phone from somebody that I went to undergrad with. Because in my life, the people at that time, where I want to go, where I am right now, like they have zero, as far as I know, to add to that. You know what I'm saying? I know, well, that's harsh. I'm like, well, but if every single time that I'm interacting with them, it's only about stuff that would pull me off of my purpose, off of my big why, or some type of destructive health habit, then they have no place in my life right now. Now, if they change and I see that differently, well, then great. I will welcome them back, or if they want help to move out of it, I will absolutely do that, because that's different. But that, or maybe for a lot of people, shoot, it's like watching the news all the time. It's like there's just nothing good going on right now, unfortunately, right? You guys get where I'm going? Like, I know you're not eliminating, you're not being like, well, my job is my biggest stress, so peace out, I'm moving into Tahiti, right? I mean, maybe you could do that, but most of us can't, right? So like, you don't focus on the things you can't control. Focus on the things that you can control. And even as little as eliminating a few little minor things, like you might realize, like, holy crap, like life is so much better. And along with that, if you do more of what makes you happy, there's also a lot less room for things to make you unhappy. Okay, right? Sometimes you forget, like, oh, like, I really love reading. Okay, well, when's the last time you read? I don't know, like 6 months ago when I was on vacation. I'm like, well, have you had time to read? Well, yeah, probably. You know what I'm saying? Like, we just don't do the things that make us happy because we get so bogged down with other stuff. There are many calming herbs and supplements that can help, ashwagandha, chamomile, rhodiola, rose, passion flower. I'm not going to go into that, but just there are a ton out there to do that. I mean, this should be the last thing that you add in until you've started working on some of these things, because if all you're doing is this to sort of counteract your stress level, all you're doing is treading water with a supplement. You're not actually getting down to the cause of the issues, right? Now, the last one here that I really I now consider in the supplement category that is so important for your adrenals and really your entire body is salt. Salt, 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 salt. Sodium on the periodic table. When you hear sodium, oh my God, sodium. Don't do sodium. Raise my blood pressure. It's going to kill me, right? Sodium is Na. Okay, that's sodium. Salt is NaCl, which is sodium chloride. That is true salt. And there's all kinds of other minerals in there. When things exist perfectly in nature, right? A little chemistry on here, and I'm going to impress myself right now. Like something like H2O, two positives from one hydrogen, so one hydrogen molecule, and a negative has two negative electrons, right? This exists in harmony. When water is existing in its natural form, is it good or bad for the human body? We need it, right? When sodium exists paired with chloride in the form of salt in nature, guess what? It's the same thing. It's very good for the body. I mean, think about it. What naturally occurring substance other than water and salt exists in a more abundance on our planet than those two molecule groupings right there? Like there's maybe a few other ones, but like that's it. It's that important, okay? Every single cell in your body has what's called a sodium pump or a sodium channel on it that has to drive sodium across and also chloride with it as well to literally make your body work, right? So we are so dang deficient as a society in sodium, it is ridiculous. If you want to know if you have too much salt, excuse me, I know I see we use that interchangeably so improperly. We are so deficient in salt in our society. If you want to know if you have too much salt, is that if you consume salt and you get diarrhea, then you know you have too much. Okay, this is insanely regulated inside of your body because of this cell reaction right here. So yeah, if you get too much, it's going to flush it out right away. Right, but what's interesting, and as you start putting the pieces together here, we're so deficient in salt right now, so we're so deficient in the sodium molecule right there. Well, you know what's interesting? There are many other molecules that operate similarly to sodium inside of our body because they're part of this family right there, and Ca2 plus is calcium, right? So if your body is deficient in this, but this can do a lot of the same jobs as what sodium can, well, guess where your body has a huge supply of calcium just hanging out?
Arteries.
Bones. So when it starts sucking calcium out of your bones to try to make up for the lack of other things, remember your body survived this. It'll do whatever it takes to survive, even if it means making your bones brittle in the process. Now, that's not the only reason why a person gets osteoporosis, right? On that, we can start seeing the pieces, how these kind of things go together.
Sea salt or regular like table salt?
So, well, salt, all right, real salt, like salt that came from an ocean, not something that was made in a lab. So,
Okay.
for me, when you say table salt, well, my table salt, the salt that's on my table is, yeah, exactly, yeah, like the real thing, right? It's the real thing. So here's, let me create some room here. I love a whiteboard because I just get to make all sorts of squiggly lines and it's violent, it's fun. I've started taking this kind of like a supplement, right? Now, what I would recommend for everybody here is start with a half a teaspoon 3 to 4 times a day. Okay? I currently take well over 1 teaspoon 3 to 4 times a day. So I actually, what my wife bought is just really handy. We bought the like little salt shakers that have like still the pretty big, like the kind of like, you know, BB sized crystals in them, right? The one you would normally kind of grind up, right? But it's just in a crystal form. I'll just take 3 or 4 of them out and I'll pop them and I'll suck on them for like 10-15 minutes and just kind of like slowly absorb it through that way. So I don't have any more because it's the end of the day, but I just have little salt crystals in my pocket with the lint, you know? So, but you can keep that in a purse and just pop it out. And you will be amazed at what getting this increase will do to your energy. It'll do to your metabolism. Because this right here, if you are deficient in salt, one of the ways your body will make up for it is that it'll store fat twice as easily. So this is the one. I know I teased a little bit on Facebook a couple weeks ago. It is salt.
Can you speak to the high blood pressure side of that though for people who?
Yes, so sodium in excess by itself absolutely raises blood pressure, excuse me. Because again, when you're putting something into the body that is not chemically bound to what it should be, well then you're gonna get all kinds of problems. It'd be the same thing if I just dumped pure anything into the body. If I just dumped pure chloride into the body, right? If you just drank pool water, right? Like you're gonna get sick and you're gonna have issues with that. So to my knowledge, and I can't say I've studied this, like I haven't read every scoured PubMed for that. I have not found any studies that show that. I'm gonna say sea salt just to differentiate, right? Actually increases blood pressure. Yeah, but that's a good point. Now listen, everybody is different, right? So obviously, like if you do this and you have high blood pressure and you start seeing your blood pressure go up, well then don't just keep doing this because Dr. Barnes said so, right? Okay, like. Just you gotta be, maybe you can only handle a quarter teaspoon at a time with that. Hey, Jen, I killed the AC off, so can you turn it back on? It's got a little warm in here. And I can tell I'm not the only one, so. But good question. So don't be afraid. Remember, like this, your body needs this. It will use it. It will use it. It will use it. You need it for those of you that have tried going low carb before and you got headaches, you got weak, right? It's a deficiency in salt that will make that way worse than it has to be. So that's your body telling you for that. So this is like literally not even over the counter. This is on the counter, right? You know, medicine, if you want to call it that. So I was joking. I had some patients that came to this talk last night, and they came in for adjustments today, and I'm like, how many bottles of salt did you eat last night, right? It's just so easy to start, no excuses. I'm telling you, you'll sleep better, for sure. Your body will start burning fat more efficiently, you'll feel better, you will think clearly, and you'll be like, really, it was that simple the whole time, and it was sitting on my counter? Yep, that's why you come to these seminars. That's why I get paid the big bucks, just to tell you, because I tell you to eat salt. Just kidding. So here are, I'm going to fly through some action steps now, okay? So these are going to be your writer downers. Number one, wasn't obvious, eat less often. Easiest way, action step, snacking. Get rid of it. You do not have a biological or physiological need to eat between meals, to snack. Well, if I don't, I get hungry. So what? I promise you, you're not going to die. Well, if I don't eat between meals, then I'm going to get low energy and tired. It's because what you ate for that last meal was crap and it tanked your blood sugar. Okay? You do not need to snack. You do not need to snack. You will not die. Okay? Then the next step is you can start doing some time-restricted feeding, aka kind of intermittent fasting, right? And I'm working with Heather, who is, she's an RN, and we're working together on writing this out, a whole weight loss program. So I'm putting together this fasting kind of protocol and all that. So I'll give you just a kind of a super quick synopsis on this. What you can do is like every other day, I'm not gonna write this out, every other day, what you would start would be to not eat breakfast, okay? Like every other day, let's say, get used to that. And then once you're comfortable and good at that, then maybe every day you don't eat breakfast, right? And then once you get good at that, then maybe every other day you start cutting down your dinner size maybe a little bit, and then eventually maybe you don't do dinner and maybe you don't do lunch. So currently right now, once a week, I only eat, so I'll do a 23-hour fast. So I'll eat dinner, usually it's on Sunday, and then I won't eat again until Monday, dinner, right? And that sounds, oh, that's so crazy. Well, not really. Like, all you're doing is missing 2 meals. Like, I guarantee you all of you have skipped 2 meals in a day before, and you're still here, right? Okay? Like, you're not going to die. So, but you really just got to listen to your body on this. And remember, every single meal, I guess, if you want to look at it, that you skip, which is really stupid because I have not, like whoever came up with the 3 square meals that, like, again, there's never been a study to prove that that's what we actually need, right? Like, I can't imagine our ancestors like sat down like, well, it's breakfast, so I guess I'm supposed to eat now. And now it's lunch, the sun's in the mid, so I guess we need to sit down and eat again just because that's what time it is. And then, oh, it's the end of the night, so we're gonna eat. Like, it wasn't available like that. So like that was purely a modern agricultural play, all right, for that. So, and then eventually you can start going longer than 24 hours. Maybe you do 36. Maybe you eat dinner, one night. Don't eat the whole next day, but then you eat breakfast or lunch like the day after that, right? And remember, every single meal, well, I'll say skip, even though I don't even like that terminology, but every meal you skip means you're skipping an insulin production, and every insulin spike, you're skipping, you're burning fat. Right? Remember, your body wants to survive. It doesn't know that you're gonna eat lunch, so it's going to start consuming those fat stores that it's got, because like, well, we need energy to keep going, so it taps into that. Remember, like as I said about 30, 45 minutes ago, you cannot burn fat when insulin is in your bloodstream, okay? Next one is to get blood sugar under control. Best way to do that, of course, is to eat the obvious and don't eat the obvious, but really it's to test it. You can buy a good glucometer off of Amazon. They're like $30, okay? It's what diabetics use. You test your blood sugar and you see how your body responds, okay, to certain things that you eat. So the readings that I like are when you wake up first thing in the morning. Keep in mind that's always going to be a little bit higher. But then you should see pre-meal, okay, and then 2 hours post-meal. 2 to 3, okay, everybody's a little bit different. These numbers right here, pre and then 2 to 3 hours post-meal, should be the same. So let's say pre-meal you're 85. You test it 30 minutes after you ate, it's gonna go up, right? Even if you're eating healthy, like that's okay. But 2 to 3 hours post-meal, that number should be back down very, very, very close to what it was right before you ate. If it's not, remember, then that's your body. That's just you know you're insulin resistant because that blood sugar is hanging around longer than the body wants it to because that insulin is not efficiently able to do the job that it wants to do. Okay, so and you know, listen, if you are a diabetic, like please, like don't just start. You got to be very, very, very careful with this, right? Be very testing. Like it's not my medical. I don't have a medical license to like you know. If you die, it's not my fault. All right, so. But you can still work this, and most diabetic. I just say that because it's like yeah, if you tank and you crash because you are taking the same amount of insulin as you normally do, and then you just don't eat. Like insulin doesn't know not do anything just because you haven't eaten, right? So you have to be very, very careful and you know work with somebody qualified to help you with this if you got real bad issues. But you don't have to be a diabetic to know these numbers, all right? Because most of you in here, if you have belly fat, you're either insulin or leptin resistant or both, right? Or you have high blood sugar, higher than it should be anyways. So like you can still be monitoring this to know how it goes. And you also, why this is key is everybody responds slightly differently to food. You might find certain things that you eat that you would have no idea that would raise your blood sugar do. Like I've seen people, black coffee raises their blood sugar. Okay, don't ask me why. There's probably a reason, I just don't know it, but I've seen it. Get your adrenals under control. We went through all that stuff handling the stress. Salt is just super easy. And I would say, listen, out of that list that I went over, pick 2, right? Like maybe quality sleep means you just prioritize it a little bit more. Less ESPN, less CNN, whatever it is in bed at night, more sleep, okay? Even if you added 30 minutes, think about the cumulative effect of 30 minutes more sleep over 365 days. Who's gonna live longer, right? So I'm gonna just kind of put that together there. So it really is that important. Exercise. I'm gonna talk about this quickly. I will tell you, you will never blast your belly fat by walking. Sorry to say that. You're not gonna walk it off, okay? You might walk some of it off, but you're gonna get a point where walking will not touch it anymore. So it's not quantity, it is quality of your exercise that is going to do that. That will change you hormonally more than anything. 3 minutes of quality exercise will beat 60 minutes of quantity of poor quality, of low quantity, high quality exercise will be high quantity, low quality all day long. So what does that mean? Anything that gets your heart rate up. And the more you get your heart rate up, the higher the quality of the exercises and the more your body has to respond metabolically for that. So some of you, if you rolled out of bed and did 20 squats as fast as you can, I guarantee you will be out of breath and you will be dead. And that might take you 30 seconds, it might take you 3 minutes to do that. That'll trump 3 hours of walking that you could do during the day. all day long. The workouts that I do, for example, my workout on Tuesday, it was 14 and a half minutes long, and of that 14 minutes, 6 of it was resting and trying to catch my breath from dying, okay? So it was really only about 8.5 minutes of exercise. Some of you know this one, you know, and all that, but you will never walk off that belly fat. I'm just telling you, again, if it was that easy, we'll just all be walking around and with no belly fat, but it's just not. It's not happening, okay? Number 5, is toxins, okay? Toxins are fat soluble, just the way they're chemically made, which means that they have the ability to transport across into fat cells very easily. So, real quickly, right, the more fat cells you have that are full of toxins, again, hopefully this is starting to click with some of you here. Again, think about a survivability. Your body is smart. It knows that when it is toxic, it needs to keep it out of the organs. It needs to keep it out of the important areas. And because they're fat soluble, then the body can shove it into fat cells. But now this person that has lots of toxic fat, they start exercising the right way, they start reducing their carbs, they start blah, blah, doing all the right things, right? And the scale doesn't move even after a long time of working, and they're like, what the heck? Well, think again, think about it from a survivability standpoint. If this person's body all of a sudden starts burning off fat, those toxins, they don't go anywhere unless they're nuked with like glutathione and other antioxidants, which we're all very low on those in our society. Guess where all those toxins are gonna go? Back into the system, back where they can cause issues. So the body will literally pump the brakes, because like, well, we can't deal with this right now. So, you know, typically that abdominal fat and that visceral fat that does not budge, despite best efforts, best plan and all that, usually there's a major toxicity component going on there. The other reason why this is so key, okay, with this too, so you also have to think about now, real quickly, and this is the last tangent I'm gonna go on, with what you eat, specifically with animal products, right? If that animal is toxic, those toxins are gonna be stored in the meat, okay, in the fat, excuse me, right, specifically. And so it's just really important to remember the quality of what you're buying here, because that's going to have a big translation to us. So really important to obviously stop the toxins coming in, and then there are natural ways to boost detoxification, right? Like, you know, putting glutathione up, other antioxidants. But number one is, of course, to stop getting as much in there as you possibly can. I think that's all I'm going to cover for that part right there. All right, now before we all bail out of here, I know there's probably some questions, but I'll hang around afterwards, no problem. I want to go over some other very specific kind of walk away things that we can do here, all right, for everybody. Everybody get applied.